Okay, greetings folks. This is your video introduction to the lab on regeneration ecology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a series of clips from several different sites where we've been doing some seedling planting and show you some natural regeneration as well. And what I want you to do is to think about why the things occurred the way they occurred. So our first site is actually just right up here, up the hill. So we'll go right up there and look at this. So up here you can start seeing a few seedlings kind of scattered through here. There's one of the old redwoods kind of right over there. So you can see what we've got is an old field. You can see we've got an old field up here. So this area was planted first in 2014 with redwood, and there's a few of these redwoods still here, but most of the redwoods originally died out. We actually replanted this twice. So we replanted it first in 2014, and then we replanted it again in 2015 because we had about a 90% mortality rate. In 2015 we did get a few survivors. That's what this is right here. This is one of the redwoods that survived. But again, we had about 80% mortality. The following year in 2016, we ended up replanting with Douglas fir, and that's the majority of what you're seeing in here. So this is a Douglas fir from 2016. And these have continued to grow since then. Now, also kind of in here, there are some volunteer pines. So these are actually just trees that volunteered on their own, and you can actually see they're the tallest ones in here. And they're sort of scattered haphazardly through here. Now, these trees were originally planted in plots, and you can see some of the center stakes in here. And people have been coming in, somebody's come in here and pulled up a few of these seedlings recently. I'm not sure who's been doing this. There are a number of these seedlings that have been pulled up here recently. Huh, kind of interesting. Actually, all the pines could stand to be pulled up. So I'm not sure who's doing this, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. So anyway, this is the first site. It's relatively open. You can kind of see the sky up above us. It's fringed by a combination of trees, so there are some coast redwoods in here, but some of these taller trees up here are also pines. So those are the Monterey pines, which are the seed source for these saplings that we're seeing in here. So anyway, this is the first site, so area 1, if you will. So this is area 2. This area we actually planted last spring with coast redwoods. So every place you see these flags, we actually had planted coast redwoods. And you can see they're dead. Very few of them actually survived. There's actually one that's kind of alive, still over here. But the majority of them, again, died. So it looks like we had probably about a 90–95% mortality. There's a tiny remnant. That one's on the way out. Yeah, that one's pretty dead. That one just barely hanging on. This one's still hanging on. This one's actually not doing too bad. So you can see this is kind of what this area looks like. Again, it's just right up the hill from it. It's a big, wide open area. So the next question is, of course, why didn't the redwoods survive here? And why did the Douglas fir survive when we planted them in the same places? So on to the next area. So now we're in area 3, which is the Monterey pine stand just across from the ball field. One of the things I wanted to show you is, you see this nice redwood tree right here? Students actually planted that probably about 2005. And there's a few more remnant redwoods that we planted in here from back then. In fact, all these along the road up here we planted. You'll also notice there's a lot of these. Oh, this is actually a good little aside. So these are pollen cones from these Monterey pines. That's what they look like. They're the little tiny ones. They're just about to start ripening. In fact, you can kind of see they're putting out little tufts of pollen already. These are the little pollen cones. Anyway, I've scattered in here, you can see a lot of volunteer pines again, so things that have kind of come in. But you can also see some remnants. So we planted this redwood, and this one was probably planted 3 years ago. And it's still alive in this understory. There's another one right up there. Another one kind of back in here. You see this one's doing pretty good. So these were all planted probably 3 years ago. These weren't planted in plots the same way the other ones were. You see, man, look at all the pollen cones in here. Now some of these did not do great. So here's one that's just barely hanging on. That's a coast redwood. This is a volunteer grand fir that's in here. Here's a larger coast redwood. This one was probably planted 7 or 8 years ago. Nice mushroom that somebody's been chewing on. So this would be area 3. This is an area where you can kind of see the canopy is broken up a little bit, particularly along here along the edge where it gets a lot of sun in from the side. As a result, some of these trees, like these are both coast redwood seedlings that we planted. Those are probably about 7 years ago as well. So you can see sometimes they'll do pretty well, sometimes they don't. So one of the things I want you to think about is what factors go into seedlings either doing well or not doing so well in a given area. Not sure what that guy is. And again, there's actually some more coast redwood seedlings in here. So some of these were planted actually the same year that we planted them out in the open in 2014, and they did better in here than they did out in the open. There's a Doug fir that was planted probably about 4 years ago. So that's this stand area. By the way, when we talked about serotinous cones, this is squirrels that have been eating on a Monterey pine cone. And they just stripped all the cone scales off of it to get to the seeds. This is kind of what the intact cones look like. So here we are in the next stand area. This is a fairly dense stand of Douglas fir with some bishop pine mixed in with it. And a really slippery trail. Should have put my cork boots on. So in here, we also planted seedlings. Actually, we planted at different times through here. So we planted redwoods in here. And you can see they've been doing just fine. Nice and healthy, good green growth on them. Douglas fir we planted are all dead. Again, more redwoods, doing fine. Another one is doing pretty well. Now these were planted at different times, so this one's a good bit older, but you see the redwoods seem to do okay, where the Douglas fir, another Douglas fir that's dead. So that's one of the interesting questions is, redwood didn't do very well in the open, Douglas fir did fine. In the intermediate stages, both of them kind of did okay, but not great. And now here in this fairly dense forest, where there's not much light getting in the undergrowth, the Douglas fir didn't do well at all. Redwood seems to be doing pretty good. In fact, as we go up the hill here, oh, there's another really pretty mushroom. You can see actually a lot of these redwoods have survived in here from both the most recent planting and older ones. Another one's doing nice. That one was planted about 3 years ago. And there's some in here that were planted probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Actually another nice one doing pretty good up in there. So these are the questions. Why does one species do good in some conditions and poor in others, and vice versa? And in particular, we're paying attention to the ones we planted, which are coast redwoods and Douglas fir, and then also looking at the things that came in on their own, like the pines and the grand fir. So those are some of the questions I want you to ask, or try to answer, is look at these different stands, look at the different success rate of seedling regeneration, and do a little bit of research into what's different between redwoods and Douglas fir. They both occur in the same environment. They're both native here. They're both commonly found here. So what's different between them that's affecting their reproductive success when we're planting them? So that's your question for this lab exercise. Good luck.